My family called me a broke disgrace and told me you're on your own now. They didn't know I owned 3 companies, so I packed my bags without a word. They didn't expect they would need my help again within 5 days. I, 32M, stood in my childhood home's living room, watching my mother's face twist with contempt as she told me I was a disappointment to the family. My father sat in his armchair, nodding along, while my older brother smirked from the doorway. They had no idea what I actually did for a living, and I had kept it that way for 3 years. The whole thing started because I showed up to Sunday dinner in my usual outfit, jeans, a plain t-shirt, and sneakers. My brother had just bought himself a new BMW and couldn't stop talking about his promotion at the accounting firm. He made 6 figures, and everyone knew it because he mentioned it every chance he got. Meanwhile, I drove a 10-year-old Honda and lived in a modest apartment downtown. To them, I looked like I was barely scraping by. My mother asked me when I was going to get a real job. I told her I was doing fine with my current work. She laughed, actually laughed, and said that freelancing from my laptop wasn't a career. My father chimed in, saying I was 32 and had nothing to show for it. No fancy car, no big house, no impressive title to throw around at family gatherings. My brother suggested I should apply at his firm, maybe start in an entry-level position if I worked hard enough. I didn't say anything. I had learned years ago that explaining myself to them was pointless. They saw what they wanted to see, and nothing I said would change their minds. So I just nodded and tried to change the subject. But my brother wasn't done. He started talking about how embarrassing it was to tell his colleagues about his younger brother who still lived like a college student. My mother agreed, saying she couldn't even mention me to her friends anymore without feeling ashamed. That's when my father stood up and delivered the final blow. He told me that if I wasn't going to take life seriously, I was on my own from now on. No more family support, no more showing up to dinners, no more pretending I was part of their success story. My mother nodded firmly and said I was a disgrace to everything they had built. My brother just stood there with his arms crossed, looking satisfied. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. I had spent 3 years keeping my success hidden because I didn't want the attention or the questions. I ran 3 companies, a software development firm that created custom solutions for mid-sized businesses, a digital marketing agency that handled 6-figure accounts, and a consulting business that helped startups optimize their operations. Together, they brought in about $2 million annually, and I had built them from nothing while working from that modest apartment they all mocked. I didn't tell them any of this. Instead, I just nodded one more time, told them I understood, and left. I drove back to my apartment, packed some clothes, and booked a flight to Tokyo. I had been planning to expand my consulting business into Asian markets anyway, and this seemed like the perfect time. Before I left, I sent a single text to the family group chat, taking your advice. Moving forward on my own. Don't contact me. Then I blocked all their numbers and got on the plane. Tokyo was exactly what I needed. I spent my days meeting with potential clients, my evenings exploring the city, and my nights working on projects that had been on the back burner. I didn't think about my family at all. I had learned to compartmentalize years ago, and this was just another thing to file away and forget about. 5 days after I left, my phone started buzzing with notifications. I had forgotten to block their email addresses. My mother had sent 12 messages, each one more frantic than the last. My brother had sent 6. My father had sent 1, which was unusual because he never used email. I almost deleted them all without reading, but curiosity got the better of me. The first email from my mother was sent 2 days after I left. She asked if I was still upset and if I was coming to my nephew's birthday party that weekend. The tone was casual, like nothing had happened. The second email, sent the next day, was more concerned. She wanted to know where I was and why I wasn't responding. The third email, sent later that same day, was panicked. She said my father had collapsed and was in the hospital. I sat in my hotel room, staring at my laptop screen. Part of me wanted to keep ignoring them. They had made it clear I wasn't welcome in their lives, and now they expected me to come running back the moment they needed something. But I'm not heartless, despite everything. I opened the rest of the emails. My father had suffered a major stroke. He was stable, but needed emergency surgery that would cost close to $200,000. Their insurance would cover some of it, but they were still short by about $80,000. My brother's email explained that he had maxed out his credit cards on the BMW and a down payment for a house. He couldn't help. My mother was asking, practically begging, if I knew anyone who could loan them the money. The irony wasn't lost on me. 5 days ago, I was a broke disgrace who had nothing to offer. Now they needed $80,000 and were reaching out to the same person they had disowned. I could have wired them the money without even noticing the dent in my accounts. Instead, I closed my laptop and went to bed. The next morning, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered it without thinking, assuming it was a client. It was my aunt, my mother's sister. She asked me if I had heard about my father and why I wasn't responding to anyone. I told her I had been busy with work. She paused, then asked me directly if I could help with the medical bills. She said my mother was beside herself with worry and didn't know what to do. I told my aunt I would think about it and hung up. I spent the rest of the day in meetings, but my mind kept drifting back to the situation. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I was just tired. Tired of being underestimated, tired of being dismissed, tired of being treated like I didn't matter unless they needed something from me. That evening, I sent an email to my mother. I told her I would cover the medical bills in full, not just the $80,000 they were short. But I had conditions. First, they would never comment on my career, my lifestyle, or my choices again. Second, they would apologize, publicly, to me at the next family gathering. Third, they would respect my boundaries going forward, which meant no surprise visits, no guilt trips, and no expectations of my time or money unless I offered it freely. I ended the email by saying that if they couldn't agree to these terms, they could figure out the medical bills on their own. Then I went back to work. My mother responded within an hour. She agreed to everything. She said she was sorry and that they had been wrong about me. She asked when I was coming home. I told her I would be back in 2 weeks and that I would transfer the money for the surgery immediately. Then I blocked her email address too. The surgery went well. My father recovered slowly but steadily. I flew back 2 weeks later, just like I said I would. When I walked into the hospital room, my father looked smaller than I remembered. He thanked me quietly for paying for everything. I just nodded and said it wasn't a problem. My mother tried to hug me, but I stepped back. I reminded her about the conditions, and she nodded quickly. My brother wasn't there. I found out later that he was too ashamed to face me. Update 1. The family gathering happened 3 weeks after my father was discharged from the hospital. It was supposed to be a celebration of his recovery, but everyone knew what was really going to happen. My mother had called every relative and explained the situation, at least her version of it. By the time I arrived, the entire family knew that I had paid for the surgery and that my parents owed me an apology. I walked into my parents' backyard, where about 30 relatives were gathered. My aunts and uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years, even my grandmother was there. They all stopped talking when I appeared. My mother stood up from her seat and walked to the center of the patio. My father was sitting in a lawn chair, still looking weak but present. My brother stood off to the side, refusing to make eye contact. My mother started speaking. She told everyone that they had misjudged me and that they were wrong to treat me the way they had. She admitted that they had called me a disgrace and told me I was on my own, not knowing that I was actually successful. She apologized for her words and for not believing in me. My father added that he was grateful for what I had done and that he was sorry for dismissing my achievements. It should have felt satisfying. It should have been the vindication I was waiting for. But standing there, watching my mother's forced apology and my father's tired face, I just felt empty. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about respect, and you can't force that through conditions and ultimatums. My brother finally spoke up. He said he was sorry too and that he had been jealous of me. He admitted that his life wasn't as perfect as he made it seem and that he had been projecting his own insecurities onto me. I appreciated the honesty, but it didn't change anything. After the apology, several relatives came up to me with questions. They wanted to know what I did for a living, how much I made, whether I was hiring. I gave vague answers and changed the subject. My grandmother pulled me aside and told me she had always known I would do well. I didn't believe her, but I thanked her anyway. I stayed for an hour, then made an excuse about having a work call and left. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt exhausted. Update 2. 2 months passed. My father made a full recovery, and life returned to normal for everyone except me. I had proven my point, but the relationships were still broken. My mother called occasionally, always careful to follow the boundaries I had set. My father sent a few emails thanking me again. My brother reached out once to ask if we could get coffee, but I declined. The problem was that I had spent so much energy hiding my success that I didn't know how to exist in my family anymore. Before, I was the underachiever they could ignore. Now, I was the rich son who had bailed them out, and they treated me with a strange mix of gratitude and resentment. Neither role felt right. I considered cutting them off completely, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. They were still my family, flawed and frustrating as they were. So I settled into a new normal: polite distance, occasional visits, and no expectations on either side. My business continued to grow. I hired a management team to handle day-to-day operations so I could focus on expansion. I bought a house, nothing flashy, just a comfortable place with an office where I could work in peace. I started dating someone who knew nothing about my family drama and didn't care how much money I made. One day, my brother showed up at my house unannounced. He said he needed to talk. I almost turned him away, but something in his expression made me let him in. He sat on my couch and told me that his life was falling apart. The house he bought needed major repairs he couldn't afford. His marriage was struggling because of financial stress. He felt like he had built his entire identity on looking successful, and now that facade was crumbling. He asked me if I had any advice. I told him the same thing I wish someone had told me years ago: stop performing for other people. Build a life that makes you happy, not one that looks impressive from the outside. He nodded, and we talked for 2 hours. It was the first real conversation we had ever had. He left that day with a different look on his face. I don't know if my words made a difference, but at least I had tried. Update 3. A year after the whole incident, my parents invited me to Thanksgiving dinner. I almost said no, but my girlfriend convinced me to give it a chance. She came with me for moral support. The dinner was awkward at first. Everyone was too polite, too careful not to offend me. But as the evening went on, things relaxed. My mother asked about my work, and I gave her a brief overview without going into too much detail. My father talked about his physical therapy and how grateful he was to be alive. My brother brought his wife, and they seemed happier than I had seen them in years. At one point, my nephew asked me what I did for a living. I told him I help businesses solve problems. He seemed satisfied with that answer and went back to playing with his toys. It was nice to be around someone who didn't care about money or status. After dinner, my father pulled me aside. He told me that paying for his surgery had saved his life, but the real gift was the wake-up call. He realized that he had spent too many years measuring success by the wrong standards. He said he was proud of me, not because of my wealth, but because I had built something meaningful on my own terms. It was the first time he had ever said he was proud of me. I didn't know how to respond, so I just thanked him. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in months. The anger was gone. The need for revenge was gone. What remained was a quiet understanding that some relationships are worth repairing, even if they'll never be perfect. I still keep my distance. I still maintain my boundaries. But I also show up when it matters. Because at the end of the day, family isn't about being right or proving a point. It's about choosing to stay connected, even when it's hard. And maybe that's the real victory. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe button would mean the world to us.